The Forum on the Family is coming up in August, Thursday 28th and Friday 29th of August at the Dewdrop Event Centre in Manukau City, just down the road from Rainbow's End. The conference is going to bring together a national network of family-focused organisations, scholars, church and community leaders and individuals who are social conservatives, like you. So you are invited. The theme of this year's forum is Courage at a Cultural Tipping Point. And we have an amazing lineup of brave speakers on key social issues from the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And in this episode of McBlog, I want you to meet two of the speakers. Now, I caught up with them all recently online and asked them a little bit about themselves and about their messaging from the conference. So in this episode of McBlog, we meet Amanda Achtman from Canada and Jeff Johnston from the USA. Joining me is Amanda Achtman. Amanda is from Canada and is coming to speak at the Forum on the Family on euthanasia and the lesson that Canada should be teaching not only New Zealand but the rest of the world. Amanda, what actually got you into this work?
Well, when I was in high school and in my early university years, I had the great gift of having my grandfather live with my family in his late 80s until his early 90s. And it was around that time that the government started talking about euthanasia for people whose deaths were deemed reasonably foreseeable. And having my elderly grandfather in our home and in my life, I realized it meant people like him. And so that's how, as a young person, I had the sense that this issue concerned me personally. And then gradually, I had the occasion to work with a member of parliament trying to prevent the further expansion of euthanasia in Canada, which was a very meaningful turning point as well.
So tell us a bit about the Dying to Meet You project.
Sure. Well, Dying to Meet You started off as a blog that was really my own catharsis. In the midst of working in politics, I started to see, wow, in Canada, we don't so much have a culture of death, though we know what that means, but we seem to have death with no culture. We've lost the cultural imagination and tenor around death and dying. And so I made a New Year's resolution to blog about death every day for an entire year, which I did. And from that, I created this broader cultural project, Dying to Meet You, to humanize our cultural conversation around suffering, death, meaning, and hope. And now this involves a mix of writing, speaking, producing short videos to help give people a platform and different events with organizations that are trying to humanize the culture as well.
New Zealand passed a euthanasia law in 2020. Well, that was the referendum. 2021, it came into effect. So we're sort of coming up to our fourth year, and already there are pushes to expand the law. And as I said, we look to Canada and sort of see just how far this slippery slope can go. When you speak at our conference in August, what is going to be your key message or messages to people attending the conference?
One of the things I would share is that it is so important we realize that once legalized, euthanasia cannot remain limited because it will always be expanded on the grounds of equality. Therefore, if euthanasia is seen as a reasonable and compassionate means of ending suffering, then why wouldn't we allow it for absolutely everyone? That's how euthanasia has gone from a last resort and an exception to something idealized and romanticized in Canada. And so that's very, very important to attend to. The other thing that I would like to share with all of those at the forum is the incredible way in which this issue can transcend ordinary polarization within the culture, because it's an opportunity to make common cause from people who value life in all stages, disability rights human rights activists, people who are concerned about homelessness, people who are concerned about mental health. This issue creates a coalition to unite around defending the value of life in all stages. And I actually find that real basis for the uplift in this work.
Well, we look forward to hosting you. Is it your first time in New Zealand, Amanda?
It will be. I'm so excited.
Okay, very good. We will put out the welcome mat and make sure you have a great stay, and we're really looking forward to what you have to share. So we will see you in August.
See you then.
Joining me is Jeff Johnston
Okay.
from Focus on the Family in the United States. Jeff, good to see you. You're coming down to New Zealand for the Forum on the Family. Is it the first time you've been in New Zealand?
No, I was actually a missionary in Australia about 45 years ago and came through New Zealand on my way back home in 1985. So it's been a while, but I remember it being beautiful. I remember there being a lot of sheep. And I'm looking forward to going down there again.
Okay, I thought you were going to say Australia, that little island just to the left of New Zealand, and maybe didn't understand the relationship. There's a bit of competition there. Jeff, tell us a little bit. I know you've been with Focus on the Family because of my connection to Focus on the Family and the important advocacy work and family work that it does in the United States and how much of that gels with what we're doing in New Zealand. And I guess we're dealing with the same cultural challenges. What are some of the areas that you've been researching and writing about that's taken up most of your time?
Well, recently things have shifted. You've probably all noticed the transgender issue has really hit the forefront. So my background is about leaving homosexuality, and I had some gender struggles of my own. So I've been writing about that issue for the last 5 or 6 years. We have a news outlet called The Daily Citizen, and I write for that. I've also been writing, I was an English teacher many years ago. And so I've been covering more the education issues and issues like critical race theory and DIE or DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how those affect schools and how those affect families. And then I've also helped produce some resources for families. Focus is a ministry to families and parents, and we want to help them navigate the culture, provide them with resources when they're struggling, and also move people towards activism. So I've done some testifying at the Capitol. I've written some about the state legislation here in Colorado that's really, really problematic. So those are just some of the issues I cover.
And we've asked you to come and speak about how to tackle the culture, but do it with love and grace, speaking the truth in love. And I guess that's the really hard balance, isn't it, Jeff, that we want to attack the ideology, but we don't want to attack the people that may be victim to some of this false thinking and unfortunately this dysphoria especially prevalent. So what do you think's the message you're bringing to the delegates for the conference in this area?
Well, part of what I want to discuss is some of the confusion in the church on these issues. There's been a dramatic shift in how many churches, especially the more liberal ones, have approached issues of sexuality and identity. So I want to talk some about that and what the Bible says about who we are, our identity as male or female, and if we're believers, our identity as Christians. And then also about how God brings hope and healing to people. So that's one side of it, the ministry side. And it is difficult sometimes to do that ministry work, but also address issues in the culture where there's just so much wrong thinking on these issues. And so we try to help people do this with grace and truth. I used to say 10 years ago, I said we had to do this with grace and truth, but I've added to that we have to do this with courage. It's really hard for some people to speak out on these issues, to speak the truth in love. So we've got to be courageous, and we've got to be wise about how we talk about these things. We've got to understand the issues and then address them in clear, truthful, loving ways. So we try to walk that balance here. It is a difficult one, but I want to help you guys do that same thing, walk that same line with that same kind of balance.
Yeah, and just finally, you use the word courage, and that is the theme of the conference, courage at a cultural tipping point. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, said at the beginning of the year that he believed there'd been a cultural tipping point, almost back to biology. Even here in New Zealand, we're actually starting to realize that only women can get pregnant. I know that's hard to believe, eh? And so there has been, do you think we've reached a kind of tipping point, a cultural tipping point in terms of realizing just how radical some of the stuff is and there's starting to be pushback?
I think there is. A lot of parents here in the U.S. woke up during the COVID pandemic when schools were shut down. And so they would, their child would be in the living room with a computer or at the kitchen table. And parents began to see some of the books they were reading, which are, sexualized and confusing. They would see some of the lessons that were being taught. I was talking to a mom recently. Her son was given an assignment where he had to talk about how evil white racism was and what the culture could do to stop this oppression by white people. And she said, wait a minute, where are you getting this? And we're not going to write about that in this family. So she got up and spoke before a board meeting, and she was viciously attacked by local media for doing this. So we do need to be courageous. She's since become kind of a mama bear activist here in the state. And we need more of that. We need more people who are willing to say, whoa, this isn't truth. We're not going to tell these lies. We're not going to cooperate with these lies that are being promulgated. And so we've seen a growing backlash here. Sadly, at the same time, we've also seen people double down on a lot of these issues. Here in Colorado especially, right now we're facing a piece of legislation where parents could lose custody of their child if they don't affirm the child's transgender confusion. And so the legislature is very radical and activist, and they're pushing this bill, but parents are pushing back at the same time. So I don't know if we've hit the tipping point yet, but there's certainly a lot of encouraging signs right now.
Okay, well, we look forward to hosting you in August, and I know there's going to be a lot of mama bears and papa bears in attendance, so we're looking forward to getting the resources and the encouragement and stiffening their spines as well in the culture that we face both here in New Zealand and in the US. So look forward to seeing you in August, Jeff.
Yeah, it'll be great to be there. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me too. I appreciate it.
So here's a full lineup of speakers. Dr. Miriam Grossman, live from New York. Dawn Hawkins in person. A pre-recorded interview with Israel and Maria Falau due to Israel's rugby commitments in Japan at the time of the conference. And then in person, Kirralie Smith, Jeff Johnston, and Amanda Achtman. Now, register today. Go to forumonthefamily.nz. The last 3 years have been sellouts, so don't delay. forumonthefamily.nz. Register today.